everybody, running around a little crazy trying to get things together last second here to make this all work, and I think I've got it all, but before I actually start, I'm just going to double check everything, because you know how it is on the live show, it's never really ready on time, is it? Oh boy, all right, so we got a bunch of stuff to compare to sitting here. We've got the lens to unbox. This is going, that's recording, that's up. We've got people in the chat rooms, and yeah, I guess we're ready to go. Let's do this thing. Bart, you don't like my thumbnail, huh? It's creeping you out? I was trying to go for like a Gollum look thing. And I was trying to, okay, so story of the thumbnail, I wanted like a my precious, kind of a Gollum thing. And I was trying to find a good picture of Gollum where he's holding something so I could kind of like overlay them. I was even gonna take that picture, load it into the S1 and do, you know, the S1's got the overlay feature so you can see a photo while you're setting up another photo. So I could kind of like look at a screen and kind of like get, but I couldn't find the right picture and then I decided I have other things to do. So I just did that one. Quick Photoshop job. I don't know, I think it came out okay. It's a little creepy, a little funny. Do you guys like it? It's, you know, it's different. Okay, let's do this thing, shall we? Everything in place. What is that cable sticking up in my monitor? What is that thing? Got weird things on screen. It's a disaster back here. I know I'm doing stuff over there. We're getting there. All right, let's do this thing, shall we? Yeah, we're ready. Everything's recording. We're good. On today's show, we're going to be doing an unboxing. Yes, a real unboxing. It's been in my hands for almost 24 hours, and I actually haven't opened it yet, of the brand new Panasonic LUMIX 10-25mm f1.7 lens for Micro Four Thirds. This may well be one of the single most anticipated lenses of all time for Micro Four Thirds. This is a thing of reported beauty. I have yet to hold in my hands, other than in the box, the actual full finished product. I've had mock-ups in my hands. I've seen pictures of final product, but I haven't actually seen it. This came yesterday, and I really wanted to open it, but I decided to wait to do a show with you guys. So, with that said, let's just get this thing rolling. This is the brand new 10-25mm f1.7 aspherical LUMIX lens for Leica LUMIX lens, by that, for Micro Four Thirds. So for your GH5, GH5S, G9, what have you. And this is going to be a very, very popular video among those, lens, among those who like to do video. So let's just get into it. I brought out a couple other lenses here to compare to in size. I've got here the 12-60, which is your kit lens with the GH5. Many of you who have GH5s will be very familiar with this. You'll be able to compare it like that. If you have the 8-18, I've got that here as well, so you can compare to that size, which is actually pretty similar to the 12-60, not that different from there. I have the 12mm f1.2, is that right? Yes, no, 1.4, sorry, the 12mm f1.4 lens, another very popular lens, obviously not a zoom lens, and the old 7-14 f4 lens, which is an older lens, kind of replaced by the 8-18, but I've got the generational steps here so we can compare them all. So we're going to do that. But with that said, let's just get into this thing, shall we? I think it's time to open. So let's just open this thing up. Again, honestly, have not opened it yet. I don't know how I resisted. Paperwork, who cares about paperwork? We go into the top. What do we find in the top? Let's see here. Let's get a little top-down view here. What do we find in the top? We find it here probably a lens shade. That is what that looks like. That is the lens shade. That is, as expected, a large front element, which means a large lens shade. Let's just do a comparison of the shade itself to the one that goes for the 8-18, and you can see a pretty significant difference there already. So that's your 8-18 versus the new 10-17. 10-25, I know my products, and a very nice bag for it, given the size of that bag. Oh my, that is a honkin' bag. That tells you that we've got a pretty good, this has got to be the fattest lens bag I have ever. And let's get on with it. Let's get on with it, shall we? All right, it's in here, it's peeking out at me. I can see it. Let's lay this on its side, and let's see. There she is, nice and big. It is a beaut. It's lighter than I thought. I've heard this before. I have heard pretty much from everybody who's actually handled it that it is lighter than they expect it to be. That's nice. I mean, obviously, one of the whole reasons of shooting Micro Four Thirds is to go for that lighter weight kit. It is lighter. It is, I mean, obviously it's heavier than these other lenses sitting here, but it's not as light as I expected it to be. All right, well, let's just see here. What have we got in here? What have we got in here? What have we got in here? Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ah, there it is. Oh, that is pretty. That is, wow, that is fat. That is a big front element. That is a big fat lens. Okay, let's get some details on here. So we've got, in fact, let's do it this way. And let me do a quick little zoom in on this here, make sure we can see all these details as we should. All right, so 10 to 25, as we can see here, we've got our zoom ring on there. So there's your 10 out to the 25. So of course that is a 20 to 50 millimeter focal length in full frame equivalent, which is a really interesting focal length, I think. It's very nicely wide. So with your 8 to 18, that was a 16 to 36 equivalent. Did I do that right? And it's like you wanted, you want a little bit more. Like you want a little bit more out of it. You want a little more length out of it. That you're getting on here. Goes almost to the 50 millimeter equivalent. It's interesting. Or it does go to the 50 millimeter, sorry, it does go to the, honestly, I should just start over again. 20 to 50 millimeter equivalent focal length. So that's actually really, really good. Wow, I know what I'm doing. Okay, let's try this again. Let's go back to the overhead here. So on the manual focus, there's this thing called a clutch, which, there it is. So when it's clutched up, we are in normal autofocus mode, clutch it down, and we are in manual focus. And that is really nice. That feels really good in the hands. We'll see what it looks like on the camera, but that is great. I love the clutch. We've seen the clutch on the 50 millimeter f1.4 lens for the L-mount S series lenses, which is very, very nice. So that's something we're seeing, I believe, for the first time in Micro Four Thirds. And then, of course, there is the aperture ring, which is totally stepless. So here, listen. You hear nothing, do you? There's no steps. There's a click into the auto position, and then no steps, stepless aperture. So that is what we've got on this thing. So let's do a little side-by-side comparison, then we're gonna stick this thing onto the GH5 and have a look through it. So full size-wise, there is a significant size difference here. And we just kind of do the lineup here. That is pretty significant difference in size. Obviously a bit heavier. Like I said, lighter weight than I expected it to be, but that is, that's a big lens. Putting this on the camera, let's just do it. Well, here, let's do a quick top down so you can see the actual front element size difference in there. Maybe I'll take the shades off to make it a little bit easier to compare there. But again, we're comparing to the 8 to 18, which has a filter thread size of 67 millimeters. This new one is 77 millimeters. So 77, 67 down to here. And as we go down the line, the 12 to 60 has a 62 millimeter. The 12-1.4 also has a 62 millimeter. And then the 7 to 14 does not have a filter thread on it. So you can't even put a filter on that lens. Making sure that's accurate. Yeah, that's accurate. I haven't used this lens in a really long time. So it's bigger. It is definitely bigger. All right, let's get this thing on. We'll go ahead and put the lens shade on because that's how most of us are going to use this thing. Let's get this thing on my GH5 here and see what we've got. So let's see here. The bottom, all right, here's something of interest. The bottom of the lens does protrude farther than the base. So if I set this down on the tabletop, it is not perfectly flat at this point. Now, actually, if I take off the lens shade, are we getting, no, it's still tilted up a little bit. So the lens is physically bigger than, does protrude out farther down than the bottom of the camera. So just an important little point to know. It might matter to you if you do a lot of, let's say, tabletop photography where you're literally setting the camera on the table. This is going to tilt up a little bit. So good to know. Very minor, but it is in there. Important detail. In the hands, it's not feeling like it's weight forward. It's not like the 50 to 200 is a huge lens that's clearly going to be pulling forward a bit. You know, I mean, obviously the weight is on the forward end of it. Clearly, it's just physics, but it doesn't feel heavy in the hand. It still feels very good on there. Nice. I like it. I like it. And the zoom, well, here's worth noting as well. When we zoom, our smallest position seems to be about the 12 millimeter range. So as you go to 10, it pokes out a little bit. Back, it pulls in, and then it pushes back out again. There's some physics of lens design in there that I have yet to ever comprehend. Then again, I haven't really looked into it, but that kind of weird, like it goes in and anyway. So there we go, there's that. All right, well, let's take a look through this thing, shall we? I think that's kind of an important next step. Let me grab my HDMI cable here, plug you in so you can see what I see. And I think what we'll do is I'm gonna kind of flip this thing around into a selfie mode and see what that looks like pointing back at me. The sound will be a little bit out of sync when I'm pointing at me just because of the way the whole configuration here for the live streaming is set up. Don't worry about that, but this is what we're gonna see. Let's see here, put this into auto mode and make sure we're synced up. We are. Let's take a look. Let's see if I'll do it like this. Flip it around so I can see that cable in my own way. And, oh, I need to, sorry, let's do a little exposure setting here first. Set the proper exposure rating, and we're in manual. We're just gonna go into, yeah, we'll leave it in manual mode. That's fine. We're gonna open this all the way up to f1.7, and we'll go auto ISO. We'll let that control the exposure. All right, let's see here. What have we got here? So at 1.7, we are wide open right now, and let's see here. Where are we? It is so hard to do this with a cable, the HDMI cable in the way. Oh, it's not autofocusing because I have it clutched into manual focus mode. There we go, that's better. Okay, here we go, looking through the camera, there it is. So you can see this is arm's length holding out in front of me, so you can see the field of view. So just to kind of put that in perspective, this is where I'm holding it. This is, so again, a very, very vlogging, let's get rid of the white background, you can see a little bit more clearly. Very, very vlogging type of position if you're gonna do that sort of thing, if that's what you're buying this for. And you can see through there, you can see at that distance, we're getting, wow, look at the edges there, just no distortion. Probably helps if I hold the camera level, there we go. Almost no distortion at all. Very, very clean. Look at the bar. So I'm looking at, wrong side, this side, that metal bar, there it is. And as we get close to that, you see, like just, I don't want to say absolutely no distortion because someone will point out that I'm wrong, but virtually no distortion in there. Looks very, very clean. Nice bokeh on there, nice shallow depth of field at 1.7. That is fantastic. Now let's zoom it. So to the closest distance, now of course that is a 50mm equivalent. And now we're seeing a more pronounced bokeh, more pronounced shallow depth of field on there. And that is looking absolutely wonderful. I'm looking at another monitor, that's why I'm looking off camera here. I can't really see my little screen with that HDMI cable on it. But I'm happy. I'm looking, that is nice. That is nice. Again, if you're gonna do this all day long, you know, it's heavier than your other lenses, but you're not carrying an S1 around like this, are you? It is still a Micro Four Thirds kit. It is still relatively lightweight. I'm digging it. That is beautiful. I cannot wait to get out and start shooting with this thing. Well, I guess that's really all I need to show you right now. We're going to jump into a Q&A. If there's anything you want to know specifically about the lens, I will do my best to answer it for you. So get ready for that in the Q&A. Let me just pull up the pricing page on this real quick before we go. For anyone who has not yet seen the pricing on it, it's not a cheap lens, but when you compare it to what else it would take to get to this point, it is a good value. $1,800, $1,798. On B&H right now. It shows here, new item coming soon. As I understand, these are shipping to the stores this week. So if you have pre-ordered one, you should be getting it shortly. If you decide to buy one, scroll down, there's a link below. You can grab it from there, and it will be available, of course, in all your usual suspect places. And that's about that. So if you got any questions about it, stick around. We're gonna do a live Q&A. Anything you wanna know, I will do my best to answer it. Let's do it. Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back to the photo moment for the Q&A session of the show. Let's just see what's going on over here in the YouTube chit chat. And of course, I forgot to check if anybody watching anywhere else right now. It's, man, all right, I got to talk to Restream. They are definitely screwing up the YouTube feed again because I'm not seeing any info on here, but clearly we are live. Alrighty, so let's see here. WonderCloud Media asked, I wonder if it has OIS, and it does not. It is not an optically stabilized lens. There's two reasons for that. Well, one, it would have to be bigger, probably more than two reasons. It would have to be bigger to do that, and to get this focal length in this aperture, it's kind of big enough already. But also, at that wide of a focal length, you don't, okay, 50mm equivalent, you could definitely argue that you could use a stabilized lens. But when you're shooting on the wider end, it really is a lot less necessary. And of course, if you combine it with the GH5 or G9, where you have the stabilization in the body, then you're going to be fine, especially at those wider focal lengths. On the GH5S, which does not have stabilization built in, then you are talking about a totally unstabilized rig. So you're definitely going to have to be a bit more cautious, perhaps putting it on a gimbal or a tripod or whatever works for you. Speaking of gimbals, I have no idea what it would take to balance this on a gimbal. Again, it is, of course, larger and more protruding than one of these smaller lenses. I think that the 8-18 is great for gimbal work because it is so much smaller, keeps your center of gravity farther back, but I'm not much of a gimbal user. I own one and I hardly ever use it, so I can't really speak to it, but but I would imagine it'd be a little bit harder to get set up on there. So this lens plus the GH5S is not going to be your best handheld option, but this lens on a GH5 or G9 would be a great handheld option. Let's see here. What else we got? Holland Z family, hello to you. Sean Secka says sharp all the way through, all the way around though. That is the idea. Bart says, oh, we were talking about the thumbnail earlier. WonderCloud Media, GH5S worthy. Well, I think we just talked about that. So certainly a fantastic lens for it, but less usable handheld. Let's just put it that way. Although I will point out, and just kind of, it's like take a step back for a second. You know, we talk about stabilization a lot these days and how good it has gotten. And then when it's not there, like on the GH5S, it's easy to throw a hissy fit and complain about there's no stabilization, oh, it's an unusable camera. Okay, let's just go back a couple of years, and stabilization wasn't on much of anything at all. Remember, the GH4 didn't have stabilization built into it, and there was stabilization to some of the lenses, but even before that, there was no stabilization. Cinematography lenses don't have stabilization. Somehow we managed to get by all these years without stabilization. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have it. It's a fantastic feature. I love having it, but if you don't have it, it's not the end of the world. There are certainly ways to stabilize the camera, and in a pinch, you can always stabilize in post. So just you know, throwing that out there. Just let's not forget that, shall we? All righty. Let's see here. The music, ooh, my music is annoying. I'm sorry, Tim. It's just this random selection of licensed music that I keep loading onto an iPod and plays in a random shuffle. Sometimes you guys love the music, sometimes you don't. What can I say? Let's see here. Volans, hello to you. Mr. Tom Curley, greetings, sir. Sean Mark Nipper, Christmas in August. Yes, it most certainly is. Hi from Dortmund, Germany. I didn't have the right photo. Oh, probably talking about the, what do you call it, the Gollum thing. Yeah, I guess I can't. Tim, I think I can confidently say I can't afford this lens. Sorry. Well, let's save up for it. You know, it's one to save for. Oh, Sean saying the puppy will fit nicely on my Blackmagic Cinema camera. It will. I wonder how you're possibly going to get your hands on one, though, because you can't have this one. No, I don't get to keep it for very long, I'm afraid. So it is unfortunately not going to be on yours. It's about the same size as a 50mm 1.4. You know, that's, let's compare that, actually. That's a good, where's that? It's one of these bags. Here we go. It's definitely lighter weight. It is definitely lighter weight, but let's do a little side-by-side here. I thought about comparing that for the live show, but then I thought, no, that's silly. It's not. It's like an apple and oranges comparison. This is not a legit comparison. It's not like you could choose to put the 51.4 on your Micro Four Thirds. So let's see here. So let's see the 77. Yeah, it is the same size filter thread. So it is the same size front element. It is almost as tall. And yeah, it really is, but the 50 is definitely heavier. There is no doubt about that. The 50 has got some extra weight to it. But yeah, otherwise it is a very similar size. I'm glad you brought that up. That's good. I did want to compare it. I just didn't want to make that part of the main show. Super, and that is such a remarkable lens. Incidentally, for anybody from Panasonic watching, I had a request on the channel. Someone said, beg, borrow, plead, do whatever you have to, bribe who you have to get a reference version. So this is the 50mm f1.4. It's called a reference lens, basically meaning that it is built to be the highest quality possible. Somebody wants a reference lens 85 as well, and I think he said a 12, something wide, or maybe 24, I guess would be something wide. But he wants like an 85 portrait reference lens. It'd probably be like a $4,000 lens. But this chap also bought a LUMIX S1 and S1R, so clearly a user who wants his toys. Okay, moving on. Let's see here. Where are we? Sean says it came with a hat. Oh, that's funny for the bag. It kind of is hat size almost, isn't it? And Sean's wondering how it will work on the Ronin S. Yeah, you know, that's something definitely worth trying. Let's pull this guy up here. Nice lens, interesting. Jog's point comparing it to the Sigma. So nice lens and mostly so good as a legendary Sigma 10-35, 1.8 for IPS-C, but 1.7 is 3.5 on full frame. Right, so if you have the Sigma lens and you put a Metabones adapter onto it, it is a faster lens, faster from the aperture lens. That is correct. But it is bigger, heavier, I think more expensive, and of course the autofocus performance is going to be significantly worse. Whenever you do autofocus through the Metabones adapters, they're not as good by quite a large margin. So there is a convenience factor for this. If you are looking for that extra, what is I think an extra half stop or something difference by the time you adapt it, then sure, that's a way to go. But in general, this is designed for this really is designed for the people who are using that Sigma lens, but want that native feel to it, the native package, I should say. Aaron, macro 4/3, micro 4/3, Aaron, is what it is. Micro 4/3, absolutely. The lens is 2 times the size of your G9. It's big. It's big. I'd grab a G9, but it's, you know, it's the same size as the GH5, so you get the idea. Oops, scrolling down here. Let's see here. Anything else? Oh, can I compare it to the 50-200? Absolutely. I just put that down over here. So I am in the process of, great, where did it go? Is that it? There it is. I am in the process of assembling new shelves. They just arrived yesterday. They came a day late. They're in boxes, flat packed right now, taking up a whole part of my studio. So I've got everything moved around so that I can finally get things organized, and all of these lenses will be gloriously laid out. I'm so excited. Never been so excited about shelves in my life, but there you go. Okay, this is the 50-200, so I'll do it without the lens shade, because the lens shade on this obviously is a massive protrusion. So let's see here. It is very close to the same height. So let's just do, there's your, well, guys, so we'll do it top down. That'll make more sense. So let's see, this is 67 versus 77. That's the 50-200. So the 50-200 is a narrower, what do you call it, filter thread. Laying them down side by side here, you can see height-wise, let's line them up on the bottom. The 50-200 is just a little bit longer. That, of course, is scaled all the way back. If we zoom that out to 200 and put this out to the 25, then obviously there's a bigger difference in there. But it is not a massive difference, which is kind of interesting, isn't it? Size or weight-wise, I don't have a scale here that'll weigh these. And my scale is like a 100-gram max. So very close, actually. You can look this up, obviously, and compare the actual numbers, but they're very close feeling in weight. Interesting. There you go. All righty. What else we got here? Sean Sacco says, throwing the 8-18, 15-17, and 25-14 in the bin. You know, that is, please don't, because those are all fabulous lenses. But that is one of the things, when they first announced this lens, the Japanese executive who was talking about it on the lens described it as having 5 prime lenses in one. And to the point where actually in my head I was thinking, ooh, is it not going to be a normal zoom? Is it going to be a stepped zoom, like 5 focal lengths? But no, it is a normal zoom. But because of the fixed aperture and the fast aperture at 1.7, it is like that, right? So this does replace a 15mm f1.7. Okay, obviously the 15-1.7 is like practically the size of a lens cap in comparison to this thing, but it does replace that focal length, right? And you have multiple lenses in here that are replaced by this one. So interesting, right? Interesting. Now, again, if you're doing gimbal work and you already have the 8-18, because especially on a gimbal, you don't generally want really shallow depth of field, so you're probably going to stop it down a bit anyway, then I would definitely keep the 8-18 for that gimbal work. I do a little bit of real estate work. I'm stopping down for that because I want everything in focus. I would still use the 8-18. It's ever so slightly wider. I don't need that shallow depth of field, so it doesn't make sense for that. But yeah, it's, I would keep it if you've already got it. I know you're kidding about throwing it in the bin, but there you go. Ryan would love to see, Ryan would love to see a GH6 announced to pair with this pretty lens. Hey, you never know what's going to happen somewhere down the road in the future. It's when I worked at Apple, it's so funny. I used to get asked this all the time. Like, I'd sit down on a plane. I learned to never tell people where I worked because sit down and say, oh, what do you do? Oh, I work at Apple. Because like when I first worked, it's like, yeah, I work at Apple. Like, oh, I work at Apple. And then it's like, oh, I got a problem with my iPad. Anyway, people would always ask me, is Apple working on a new laptop? And I got to the point where I just look them dead in the eyes and say, no, we stopped. We pretty much figured that the current one is the best it'll ever be, so we stopped. And they look at me and go, oh, that was a really dumb question. Yeah, it was. So the GH6 will, I'm sure, one day be a camera that we have here, but not today. Okay, with that said, and I'm not saying that it was a dumb question. Obviously, you would love to see a GH6, as many people would, but not now. Okay, let's see here. Mike Elsewhere has a question. Any idea if it functions as parfocal like some of the other Leica zooms? It is, that's a good question. I have not tested it. Given the quality of this, I'm going to say almost definitely yes, but it'd be worth comparing. It's kind of funny. I tried to do a parfocal comparison of some other lenses. I was going to do I had a whole show set up and I scrapped it at the last minute because the LUMIX S-series lenses, the L-mount lenses, are so good. Well, the 24-105 is the one that I was testing with for zoom, obviously for parfocal. It's so good, and I wanted to compare it to another lens, and so I got out a GH5 or G9 or something, and I put a couple of different other Panasonic zooms on it, trying to show how much better that one was. And the thing was that the other Micro Four Thirds lenses were so good as well that there was almost no comparison. Now, you know, I hate to like throw Sony under the bus, but I'm going to. I have seen comparisons with some Sony lenses where it's horrible. Like you change focal length and you're zooming 5 to 10 millimeters. It's insanity. So I wasn't able to show that on the lenses that I had because all the lenses that I had were so, I mean, you might get a little bit, but it was so minimal, it wasn't worth going, oh, look at how much better this is. I need to get my hands on a, like I said, some other manufacturer lens and compare them because the S-series lenses are very, very good in that. And I, again, haven't tested, and it might be in the specs somewhere that it is designed to be as parfocal as possible. I'm sure it is, again, given the size of this and the caliber of this lens, but I can't tell you firsthand. But I'll be playing with this. So ask me that question again in a week or two. Let's see here. Carol says, I purchased that lens a week ago. Oh, good. But you said that lens will deliver to shops this and next week. Did they sell me any beta version or something? Oh, you already have a copy of it. Oh, interesting, Carol. Tell me what country you're in. What I'm talking about in the U.S. market, I know they have shipped out. If you have a copy, assuming you bought it from a legitimate store, I'm sure it's a legitimate lens. But no, it wouldn't be any kind of a beta or something. Maybe just some trickled out. That's interesting. But tell me what country you're in. I would very much wonder that. Sean Saka says, I want an 85mm S-Series Pro lens too. There you go. You know, something tells me that there will be one of those. Whether it'll be the reference lens or not, I don't know. The reference lens basically means spare no expense. It's like the Jurassic Park movie, spare no expense. It's like that. It doesn't matter how big or expensive it got. It just had to be the best. And I'm sure there's, you know, within reason. But yeah, that was the idea behind that lens. The lens by which all other lenses shall be judged. Oh, Aaron's saying Macro Four Thirds was a joke because it's so huge. That's a good joke. All right, Tim says, I like my Rokinon 85-1.4. No IS, no autofocus, but a nice lens. Yeah, there's some great third-party lenses out there if you don't mind giving up autofocus and stuff like that. They're absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. All right, let's see here. You're quite welcome, Sebastian. Is the clickless aperture not a problem for photographers? No, not at all. See, this is one of the just glorious things about shooting mirrorless is you can adapt any lens, right? You can adapt just about any old lens to it, including lenses that have stepless aperture, including lenses that do not communicate the aperture to the camera, because the camera doesn't need to be told by the lens what the aperture is. The camera measures the actual light coming through the sensor in real time. So as you're adjusting the aperture, it adjusts the exposure accurately, adjust the exposure as needed as the amount of lens light is coming in. Wow, I can speak today. So on a stepless aperture like this one is, it doesn't matter that it doesn't click between settings. You can do a, if you've got third stop increments normally, you know, you can do a 100th of a stop increment if you can rotate it that smoothly. But the point is that the camera doesn't care. Now the camera will know, well, actually that's an interesting question. The camera will know what the aperture is, because this one does communicate, but it doesn't have to get the exposure right, which is, again, why you can adapt all kinds of old lenses. What I was just thinking, what occurred to me is I should look at the aperture on here as I move through and see what kind of increments. You know, 1.7, 1.8, 1.9, 2.0, 2.1, 2.2. Look at that, 10th of a, it's not 10th of a stop, that's 10th of a, what do you call those numbers? Wow, 10th of an F? I guess you'd say 10th of an F number. No, that's not right either. Ooh, what would you call that? 10th of an aperture whole number? I don't know. I don't know, but it's in 0.1 increments. That's accurate. That's really cool. 2.5, 267, 2.829. Ooh, that's neat. Ha, okay, superb. I'm glad you asked that because that triggered me into that. Let's see here. Photoplus.pl. I don't know. Oh, there we go. Carol Manning saying Photoplus.pl. Oh, from Poland. Okay, Poland. I don't know. Well, again, not a U.S. market, so I guess they got there sooner. You got yours a whole week ago. That's pretty awesome. Good for you. Good for you. Okay, I guess that is that. And stepless is very good for video. Yes, Tim, absolutely right. Stepless, the main idea for stepless is for video use because you can change the aperture while shooting and get a smooth exposure ramp, right? If you have a stepped aperture, every time it goes from one click to another, that is a dramatic and fast light change. And so you really can't shoot video with a stepped aperture ring and change the aperture while shooting. So you can do that with this lens. Now, You can do it to change exposure, right, if you are, let's say, going from indoors to outdoors, but you have to keep in mind that that, of course, is also going to change the depth of field. So you're going to go from a broader to a shallower depth of field or vice versa, depending on the direction you're going, which is why for most video production use, you are more likely to be using a variable ND filter because that changes the amount of light coming in. It's all optical. There's no stepping at all. It is perfectly smooth. And it does not change the exposure. So your shutter angle doesn't change, your aperture doesn't change, your ISO doesn't change, only the amount of light coming in changes, controlled by that optical filter. So you have a perfect transition from one to the other. Now that said, with the auto mode on this, if you're shooting in, let's say, shutter priority mode and you're shooting video and you step outside and the camera automatically closes down the aperture, then yes, you're going to get that increased depth of field as it does that, but you are going to have that perfectly smooth stepping down. And this is the first lens that has the stepless aperture permanently. If you look at the some of the other Leica lenses, like the 12 to 60, where is it? Here it is, like the 12 to 60, this normally when you're changing the aperture in photography, in still photography mode, it is clicking. And in fact, if you change the aperture, rotate the dial, it does click through. However, if you go into an auto, a semi-auto mode, like shutter priority, and you do, and I did a video on this a while ago, and you change from a dark to a light position, and the aperture ring closes down, it actually does close down stepless. So it's like a, it's electronically controlled, obviously, and it can do a stepless aperture change when the camera is controlling it. But here now you have complete control with a mechanical ring in your hands, so you can stop that down from 1.7 all the way down to f16. So pretty dramatic. Pretty dramatic. All right. Sean's saying, trying to wrap my mind around attaching a focus ring for pulling focus for the clutchy thing. Well, the whole idea behind the clutch, and maybe I should have talked about this a little bit more in the main show, is that you now have mechanical control over your let's make it more specific. You have linear control. So when you're in the up position, the non-clutched position, it is a focus by wire mode where the faster you spin the ring, the faster the focus changes. You pull it back and it's clutched and it is now linear. If I move it, whether I move it fast or slow is irrelevant. That's going to change how fast the focus changes on a linear scale. Does that make any sense? I'm totally not explaining that right. But it's linear. So if you go really slow versus fast, it's moving the same distance. Totally screwing that up, but I think you get it. So that's the clutch. So it's a linear as opposed to an, I guess, algorithmic focusing speed change. So you can play with it. You'll see. All right. There's supposed to be a 24 to 72.8 for the S coming soon. Correct. The clutch is sticky, so to speak. Well, I think, yeah, it grabs on. It's not fully mechanical. If I go into the clutch mode and I go to the closest focusing point, I can focus past that, but you feel what's called a soft stop in the lens. You feel it hit, and you can hear it, right? But I can still spin it. So watch my fingers in correlation with the sound. So my fingers can still move, but I have hit the closest focusing or the farthest focusing distance. So it's called a soft stop. You hear the stop, you feel the stop, but the lens itself does continue to move, unlike a fully mechanical lens where when you get to the end, it just fully physically stops moving. So that's kind of how the whole clutch thing works, the clutch mechanism works. So there's that. Okay, I think that's that. Let's wrap this thing up. All right, guys, hey, that was fun. I get to go play with it. Actually, I don't get to go play with this now. I got other things to do. I've got a DxO webinar I'm doing today at 3 p.m. If you haven't registered for that, it's totally free. Today's show is going to be a unique show to all the others. I'm doing, I think, 6 of these over the next month, maybe even more than that. Go to nickcollection.dxo.com. Yes, that's it. Here we go. Go to nickcollection.dxo.com. You'll see down here in the corner, it says webinars, free registration. Click on that. And let's see here. This looks like it needs to be updated. This is going back to July. What is today? July, where's me? Here we go. This is mine today. Recreating silver halide films with Analog Effects Pro. That is me. That is today at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time. Today, August 7th. Today is August 7th, right? Yes, I've got that right. So go to there, nickcollection.dxo.com. Click on the thing, or nickcollection.dxo.com/webinars will take you straight to that registration page. Free webinar, check it out. They are, I guess DxO uploads these to YouTube later, but because it's done through GoToWebinar, so the quality of the recording isn't superb. Obviously, you don't get the interactive. It's a very interactive show. So if you can tune in live, tune in live. Awesome. Okay. Sean is reminding me to plug our podcast. Why, that is a very good idea, Sean. I should plug our podcast. Sean and I are doing a podcast. It's called Shot Talk. It is now finally on YouTube, on iTunes. It's been up there for a while. Should we put this thing on YouTube as well? No, there's no point to that. It is up on iTunes now. It's all everywhere else as well. But just look for Shot Talk on iTunes or wherever your favorite platform is for listening to podcasts. Or you can go to anchor.fm/PhotoJoseph and you can get a link to it there as well. Also, it is on PhotoJoseph.com right now. Also, if you just search Twitter, you'll find it. It's like kind of everywhere now. But I think we just did episode 9. Go figure. Okay, now it's time to get out of here. See you later, guys. Bye-bye.